So here's a question. If you had an extra $1 million or $2 million, would you use it to buy an incredibly rare, one-of-a-kind book? Because news of an upcoming auction about just such a book has come up recently, and it's made me think that, yeah, actually, if I had that kind of money to throw around, yeah, I probably would buy this. At the same time, I know that there's a whole ethical dilemma about, like, should manuscripts like this be in the public domain? Should they be allowed to be privately owned? And it's a really tricky question, and one that I like to just sort of imaginatively mull over. If I had that kind of money to throw around, would I do this, or would I buy it and give it to a museum or something like that? And this reminds me of actually two different scenes from movies. Did anyone ever see that ridiculous Jennifer Lopez movie called The Boy Next Door, where this man is stalking Jennifer Lopez, and he gives to her a gift of a first edition of the Iliad?
Oh my God, this is a first edition? I can't accept this. This must have cost a fortune.
It was a buck at a garage sale.
It is so ridiculous that, oh yeah, I bought this for a buck, and that there's even a first edition of the Iliad. But it also makes me think of that scene from Indiana Jones where he's self-righteously saying it belongs in a museum.
This is the second time I've had to reclaim my property from you. It belongs in a museum.
So yeah, this is a debate that has been sparked up, and that I was reading about in this New York Times article about this upcoming auction at Sotheby's, which will include a number of very rare books and manuscripts, including a manuscript by Anne Bronte of her poems. And Anne Bronte's writing, her actual physical writing, is incredibly rare, and especially for her poems. And this manuscript includes corrections in it from Charlotte Bronte. So yeah, what an amazing book to have, and it's valued at $1.3 to $1.8 million. So if you have that money laying around, you might want to jump into this auction happening at the beginning of July. These are books coming from a collection known as the Honresfeld Library, which haven't been seen for almost 100 years' time. They've just been in this private collection, just sort of, I guess, sitting in a drawer somewhere. And wow, what an incredible thing to have. And the Bronte Parsonage in Haworth has released a statement saying that they believe this manuscript should be in their collection so it can be viewed by the public and used by scholars in their studies, and just sort of enjoyed for the greater cultural good. And I can definitely see that argument, because I, a couple years ago, went to the Bronte Parsonage, and it was such a wonderful experience seeing some of these manuscripts. There's these incredible tiny books which the Brontes wrote, and you can see in their tiny handwriting in these books, and that are kept behind these glass cases. And it's just so special having enjoyed particular works of literature, then to see the actual handwritten manuscripts of them. It is such a special thing, and such a wonderful thing to be able to enjoy as the public. But as an individual who loves books so much and feels such a personal connection to them, there's an extra frisson of excitement, I think, in actually owning that manuscript for yourself. And so I can sort of see both sides of this debate. If I had that kind of money to throw around, I would probably want to buy this manuscript, although I think I would want to make it available for the public, to be studied and enjoyed and viewed in a limited way. I'd still like to be able to go in late at night in my bathrobe and be able to look at it and just enjoy it for myself. And it's made me think about how some of the most expensive books that I've ever bought for myself, and actually the most expensive book I've ever bought for myself, is actually a manuscript version, or at least a corrected version of a manuscript which is totally original and which I have for myself. So I wanted to show that and talk about it a little bit. But also these, I think, like the best halfway ground, I think, is these sort of holograph editions of these manuscripts where you can see the writing yourself, but it's copies of it. And these have been reproduced for a number of different manuscripts. So one of them is, as I've talked about a number of times, my favorite novel is The Waves by Virginia Woolf. And one book I have is this holograph edition, which actually has two holographs of two different drafts of the novel as Virginia Woolf was writing it. And you can see the text that she wrote in this, not her actual handwriting, but the text that she wrote for these original versions and her corrections in it. And I think that's so special as somebody who loves this novel so much and has read it countless times, and to be able to see the original version of it and the corrections of it, I can sort of see the differences she made in the text along the way and how she developed this story and these characters. And so yeah, this was really difficult to get. I actually first came across this book in the library at the University of East Anglia. They have this very old, beaten up version of it. It's literally like held together by tape and is just like up on the shelves. And I took it down and was like poring over it for hours at a time. And so when I found online a copy of this for sale, I snapped it up, even though it was very expensive to buy, because I don't think many copies of this were made. And so I think I spent around £150 for it or so, or something around that. But yeah, it's such a treasure. And so, even if these manuscripts are like copied and then like mass produced, and it still can be quite expensive because it's obviously quite a specialist item. Only a limited number of people are going to be interested in this, like, realistically, and in having it. And so yeah, it still does work out as a bit expensive, but obviously much more affordable than $1 million or $2 million that it would take to buy the actual original manuscript of it. And also I have a few copies that were published by SP Books of copies of the actual manuscripts of some of these original books. So I've showed this before of this copy of Mrs. Dalloway, and it comes in these big, like, self-important cases that you have to open up, and then you can see the manuscript version in her purple ink of when she was writing Mrs. Dalloway. And one of the disadvantages of these SP editions is that it doesn't include in it a typescript of it, because the handwriting is understandably quite difficult to read. So it'd be useful to have alongside the actual handwriting the typescript of it, so you can see what words she actually put on the page, like in this copy of The Waves I have. But at the same time, it is so special seeing the actual handwriting and the actual pages that she wrote when she was composing this manuscript. So I also have copies of Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. So you can open it up and see Mary Shelley's actual handwriting, and that, I think it's even messier than Virginia's. And yeah, it has a lot of sentences and like words crossed out, and it's so fascinating, looking at these original manuscripts and seeing like what they chose to get rid of and what they chose to keep and what they chose to alter. And I think that's so fascinating. And I also have a copy of The Great Gatsby of F. Scott Fitzgerald's manuscript of this novel, which numerous lists have described as like the greatest American novel of all time. And so those are very special books, but again, they're very expensive. I think it costs about £170 to buy one of these. They're very pricey, but obviously make a very special gift, or if you want to indulge yourself and buy yourself a very special present, as I have on a few occasions. It feels really great to have copies of this. And the most expensive book that I've ever bought for myself is a edition of Joyce Carol Oates's novel Do With Me What You Will, which is a bound proof of the manuscript of this novel. And this copy of it actually includes on the end of it a typewritten page that Joyce Carol Oates composed to make an alternate ending for this novel. So yeah, at the very back of the book, there's actually 3 different endings I have for it. So the first ending is in this proof edition that was printed, and then at the very back of it, there's this typewritten page, which is her corrected ending for the novel, which didn't actually make it into the final printed novel, which you can see here, which is actually different from either of those 2 versions. So it is so fascinating to see, there's 3 different versions of the ending of this novel, and that she was contemplating how to actually end it. It's so interesting to see, as someone that is a major Joyce Carol Oates fan. This is such a treasure to have, and I think I can't remember exactly how much I paid for it. I think it was like 300 to 400 pounds. So I think it was like at a time when I got like a bonus at work, and I was just like, oh, what can I do that's really frivolous and fun with this money, and saw this manuscript version for sale online, and so purchased it. And so it feels so special to have this. But obviously, like if Joyce Carol Oates scholars wanted to come to me and study and talk about this, I would be glad to make it like freely available to people to study and consider. Yeah, it's a tricky question. If I had that kind of money laying around, like, would I spend it on like rare manuscripts like this, or maybe on something else? Like recently I saw in a newspaper there was advertised an estate known as Pondon Hall for sale, which is believed to have inspired the novel Wuthering Heights and the great house in Wuthering Heights, and that was on sale for £1 million. So maybe I would purchase real estate instead, some of these like historic real estate sites that have literary connections with it. I mean, can you imagine actually living in a house like that? And it would be a dream of mine to like purchase that estate and then like turn it into B&B, like for like literary minded folk to come to make a pilgrimage whenever they go to Haworth to visit the estate there. And at the same time, I know it's sort of silly, like why should you have and spend all this money on these really rare manuscripts when you can just enjoy the books themselves? I mean, I just have on the shelf here copies of the Bronte's books, and so why can't I just enjoy these on themselves? But at the same time, as someone that is so passionate about books, I can feel this really special connection to actual manuscript versions of the books. So I'd be really interested to know in the comments, like, if you had that money, would you purchase one of these manuscripts yourself? Would you join in the auction taking place at the beginning of July? Or would you just be sensible and buy an enormous library? You could buy so many books for that amount of money and have so much more literature at your disposal rather than just this one manuscript. It's a funny, tricky question, but just one that is I think enjoyable just to contemplate, in those sort of daydreams about what you would do if you won the lottery or something like that. So thank you for watching me and this like weird rambling like speculation about what it would be like to purchase these things. I'll put links down below to the New York Times article so you can read more about this and find the auction if you're interested in it yourself. But I'd be interested to know too, what is the most expensive book you've ever purchased for yourself? Let me know in the comments below, and I'd love to hear about it. But hope you're reading good things, and I'll speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.